appendix. People sometimes want to see more details. For example, if you don't want to put a lot of information, a lot of details, or put more some graphics in the thesis, you can put just a kind of, I have lots of appendix because in my thesis, in my PhD, for example, I did 42 interviews. So I could, yes, I was crazy.
Yeah.
I did in Portugal, in University of Minho. So I decided to not do this appendix. I gave up. But I couldn't. I had almost 400 pages only with this interview. Until now, I really want to do something with these interviews because they were so rich. So imagine 42 interviews. But I couldn't do an appendix only with this. But if you want, if you have a rich material, you can do this. More information in appendix or something like that. I think it's really important because we have you working on it, so you have to.
Yeah, I have just the survey data. If I were to put everything into the thesis, like just the original part, it will just expand so much. So I'm just gonna like slowly just show like the results also on the appendix, just this, so people can see just like how it is.
Yeah, then you have to value your work. It's important.
Oh, definitely.
Exactly. Okay, guys. So thank you for this very small interaction. Cristiane already kind of introduced herself. First of all, thank you, Javier, for joining us today in the first Zoom of this last model about communication and education projects. And today we have you met her. We have with us Dr. Cristiane Parente. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing it correctly. She has this PhD in communication science from the Communication and Society Research Center of the Institute of Social Science of the University of Minho in Portugal. And she has also master's degrees in education from the Faculty of Education of the University of Brasilia in Brazil. And another master's degrees in communication, culture, and education from the Universitat Autónoma de Barcelona. And she's also a managing partner of the organization Yandé Comunicação Educação. I'm sorry, I haven't pronounced it correctly, but yeah.
You don't hear a lot my English, so don't apologize.
Thank you, Cristiane. Thank you for joining us today. And we are a small group of 3 people, but we can start with this session.
Okay, thank you. Hello, Albert and Javid. I don't know if I pronounced your name correctly. I would like to start sincerely thanking Albert for this invitation because I really enjoy these moments here of exchange because Autonomous University of Barcelona is like a home to me online first. And I apologize for this English you will hear, but I'll try to compensate by my attempt humor. So, and of course, I use translation to this. So if you notice anything strange, well, you know, these AI and Google Translate have to be improved. So let's do this. I just want to know the country. Where are you from, Albert and Jabid? Just to me to know.
I'm from Canada, so I live in Canada in terms of my nationality. I was born and raised here, but my ethnic background is Somali.
And Albert?
I'm from Barcelona, born and raised, and in a family of generations and generations of people from Spain. So I'm 100% Spanish in this sense.
Okay. I'm Brazilian and also Portuguese. I have this two nationalities. So my language is Portuguese, and I speak a little bit of English and also Spanish and a bit of French. So let's see how this will happen. This is me. I like to be. I like to talk about me like this. Here is Cristiane Parente, but you can call me Chris. I'm Brazilian, also Portuguese. I'm a child-friendly journalist, a kind of recognition from UNICEF and Andy Communication and Rights. Albert already talked a little bit of me, and this is I'm a little bit of all of that. From universities I attended, relationships, authors, music, food, from what I've learned every day. My resume is extensive, so not so much in large publications and articles, but in many stories that I have experience in I could call that, but I'm full of stories related with media education projects. And why I did so many images to define myself, because we could spend the entire class in very rich conversations about the authors that touch us, the songs that move us, the flavors and smells that take us on journeys through our memories, because we are a complex beings. But I need to remind that each one of us, as a group that studies the interface between communication and education. So this is two areas that are very powerful areas, and we have the obligations to be careful with very persistent stereotypes, and which tend to become prejudice and prevent the perceptions of individual differences and people's life stories. I want to begin with this small text. Stereotypes and generalizing and are only part of much more complex whole, and that was a human being. In fact, I really recommend it. I don't know if you know Chimamanda Adichie's TED Talks, The Dangers of the Single Story. I don't know if you already hear about this. We can watch one day, maybe. Stereotypes also influence people's self-image, with which they often internalize and reproduce. Cultural stereotypes and quite stable over time. And both the heterostereotypes and also auto-stereotypes influence each other. And why I'm telling you this? Because in the moment in which we find ourselves, with so hate speech, separatism, and the rise of extremist political groups that fosters ethnocentrism and necropolitics that do not respect human rights, media education, believe me, can be part of a culture of peace. And we have to be agents of pressures for public media education policies in our countries, supporting the education of entire society, from the youngest to the oldest, so that they are critical of our information that receive, so that they do not let themselves to carry away the misinformation that circulates, because the dispute of other narratives will only get worse. So this is what I want to talk this. A look at what has happened in the United States, for example. The use of certain words and expressions, especially in official documents and communication materials, is being restricted. And this is extremely dangerous if we realize that these are words related to rights and issues such as diversity, equity, inclusions, feminism, racism, climate change. The New York Times published a list with 200 words, and this is related to media education. Anyway, I started with this warning because this concern is to all of us. It's not only to the United States, the planet is just one. This has to do with freedom of expression, human rights, the right to communications, media literacy. It has to do with each one of us and media, schools, society. Writing articles, do theses, master's degree, PhD, write for our peers won't make much difference. It's just a small part. Our voices need to echo outside the university's walls. So please, let's do much more than we are doing in our universities. I think it's very important. It's just the beginning of our conversation now. So let's do a kind of context. I'm here to share with you research we did here in Brazil, but has to do with everybody. It's a research that I did as a UNESCO consultant in the Secretariat of Communication in the President of Republic in Brazil. But let's begin with the context. And to begin, I quote David Buckingham and Paulo Freire. Two quotes very important. One of the most unfortunate things for a human being, it's not to belong to their time and feeling thus like an exile in time. This is Paulo Freire, our great educator here in Brazil, and there is no possible literacy without empowering individuals to use the media based on a social, political, economic, and cultural understanding. Just to understand that media literacy is political. Media literacy has to be with all things we are living now. Context. Oh my God, I can't do this. Okay. We can see media literacy activities since 1920s, so this interest is not new. In Brazil, I don't know in your countries, but in Brazil, we can see a lot of people that are new in media literacy now. And then people, oh, this is new. And no, it's not new. But it has become increasingly urgent for societies that want to be developed, autonomous, and critical in their relationship with different media and platforms. In France, for example, we can remember Celestin Freinet with his school press and field trips. As a model and an inspiration for the world. Then we can also mention the experiences with film clubs, both in France and England, especially in 1930s and 1950s, which later arrived in Brazil and other countries in Latin America, for example. However, it was from the middle from this last century that various international organizations begin to work more intensively the subject. And the first global document we remember that make reference to the need of media literacy education or media education is the Grunwald Declaration during the International Symposium on Media Education in Germany in 1982. The presence of media and technology in our lives from a very early age influences not only our perception of the world, but also changes the way we relate to other subjects and the notion of space and time. The media not only records the event that societies have experienced over time, but it also responsible for many of these events, changes and developments. Morato even states that if the media, it is the media that give us the notion of reality and our experiences of the world. We can say that the media are what establish the conditions of our experience of the world beyond our senses. So they are an environment and a dimension that increasingly mark people's lives, which is why it's difficult for us to learn how to be citizens without understanding them critically, since they are the ones who build a common word for citizens. And it's from their accounts, lenses, and social constructions that an edited word reaches us. More, we can say that much of what we believe, what we know about reality, we know from different media. The way we acquire, transmit, and construct information and knowledge about the world cannot be disconnected from what we receive, learn, and understand from the media, the social network. Therefore, it's important to reflect on this context. The role of citizens and media critics bodies is demanding transparency and accountability from these media outlets. How can we ask, how can we demand this accountability of media if people doesn't know what is media literacy, especially older people? Furthermore, it is important to understand the possibility they offer of bringing words and culture closer together. Hence, more than ever, topics such as media education and the construction of public policies for a country's education must not leave aside this fundamental aspect of the way we understand our context. Therefore, access to and the construction of plural and ethical media that reveal the polyphony of voices in a society depends on the same society being prepared and educated in the media to access, produce, analyze, and have a more autonomous, critical, and creative relationship with the media. We conduct in Brazil, as a UNESCO consultant for the general coordination of media education of the Secretariat of the Digital Policies of the Secretariat of Communication of the President of the Republic, a kind of survey to try to identify initiatives of media education in Brazil in July of the last year. And we want to present you the part of this result. But first, we will explain a few points. Where did the research come from? What? No. Where does research come from? And also the concepts we found in this. Okay, this is put in. We have to cut here. Sometimes this happens. So I can show you this. This is Brazil. We have 5 regions. So we can see Brazil is the largest country in South America. Its territory occupies almost half of the South America continent, 47%. This is the number of students we have in Brazil. The number of teachers we have in Brazil. So it's a huge country. Lucky I don't have anybody of BRICS here. Anyone from BRICS here? No. So we really are biggest here. So if we have someone of China or India, no, I couldn't say I'm the biggest one, but okay, now I'm the biggest one here. So here we have the northeast of Brazil, north. My region is here, the yellow one. Brasilia is in the middle of Brazil, the capital, this small piece, and the south of Brazil. We have this challenge here. And all of these schools. So we want to understand in this research in what places here we have media literacy education. This is the how education systems are in Brazil in this 27 state level system, just to you understand very quickly. In 5,569 municipal education systems, each one with autonomy. So, and some kind of problem with connectivity. We have all of this problem. We have connectivity problems in Brazil, but on the other hand, this is one of the biggest bets of the Ministry of Education in the country with a program called the National Connected School Strategy, which aims to connect all the schools in the country by the end of 2026, because it's the end of the current Lula government. One issue that has been widely discussed is that this is interesting because the most difficult, how can I say that? One issue that has been widely discussed now, it's because that school that needs to be connected, for example, are those that is most difficult to assess location. That is the Quilombola and indigenous schools in places where are often a few dozen people. And this is what require a very large initial investment to get a structure there. And so what the government is doing, the government has encouraged the companies to think about the municipality, all the municipality there, because when they arrive in that place, in that school, the investment will generate others investments in the municipality itself. So it's a kind of a strategy to attract some investors. Here is the President of the Republic, just so you see, and here is the annexes of the President of the Republic, and here is the places where the Secretariat of the Communication works. Here is the structure of the Secretary of the Communication with a lot of small secretariats, just to see the you can see where the research was conducted. Here is the organization chart of the Secretary of the Communication of the President of the Republic, just so you see how big it is. There are several departments in the SECOM, and one of that is Secretary of the Digital Policies, just so you see this. There is a very important department, and you will understand when I tell you the number, the name of this, secretariat. Here is the space where public media education policies for the country are designed in these annexes of the Planalto policy, where the President of the Republic is located. And why there? Because if you remember, 4 years later, in the other government, we had a very, very complicated situation in Brazil. So they decided to create this Secretary of Digital Policies to try to create a very specialized policy public. Secretary of Digital Policy with the Department of Promotion of Freedom of Expression, General Coordination of Freedom of Expression, General Coordination of Promotion of Diversity and Pluralism, General Coordination of Rights of Internet, and General Coordination of Media Education. So in this place, UNESCO and SECOM tried to do some policy publics together. I can't. Here, just so you see, we will begin the explanation of research, but just so you see this. Here is the Esplanade of Ministers with all the ministries. Just to see, and here is the context of the research, okay? The context of this research is because in the end of 2022 was marked with a lot of disinformation, misinformation around the world. And in Brazil, we had a very turbulent election period. And the beginning of 2023, the new federal administration was faced with a demand with full of fake news. And then we had done to the countries, especially in immunization system. So in climate and science denialism and violence toward press, putting Brazil on the map of the most unsafe country to the journalists, for example. So in January 2023, we also had an attempted coup d'etat by the previous government, which is currently being judged now by the Supreme Court. With all of this, on the first day of the new government, on January 1st, the Department of Online Rights and Media Education was created within the Communication Secretariat of the President of the Republic. The first action of the General Coordination of Media Education was to carry out a public consultant to understand what the population understood and as the most urgent action for this sector, as what demands there were from the society in order to allow media education actions to have from the beginning popular participation and to be transparent. We had in total almost 420 contributions were received from all regions of the country between May 19 and June 30. And from then, the government constructed the axis of the action on the Brazilian media education strategy they created. So the Secretariat of Communication of President of the Republic, through this Secretariat of Digital Policies, launched in October 2023, during the first Brazilian Media Education Week, what they considered the national policy public of media education. It was a very difficult context, and they decided to ask UNESCO to do this kind of research to understand what Brazilians need to launch a public policy. What we discovered with this Mapping Media Education initiative in Brazil as a preliminary results, we are trying to understand this now. The research was made last year. So last year we circulate a kind of survey using snowball methodology, which we will explain later. We support the ministry with the support of the Ministry of Education because they have a very large network with much more larger, as well as academic and professional associations from various areas. The idea was to seek to understand who does media education in Brazil, where media education in Brazil happens, with which audience, with what research, working on which topics, with which supports, and especially if these initiatives were within the axis of Brazilian media education strategy, because Brazilian media education strategy has 6 axes, especially work with education, basic education in Brazil, works with a digital dispositive, work with teachers. So we want to see if those experiences, those initiatives in Brazil has to be with this axis, remembering that they were created after public consultation. So in other words, it would be a kind of check to see if this was really what should be worked on, since a new version of this strategy will be released this year. The strategy of Brazil was created in 2023, and now this strategy, this kind of public policy in Brazil was revisited. They will write a new version of this public policy in Brazil. So it is important to highlight that we have no doubt that many initiatives were left out, either by the time the form was circulated, only 20 days, either because some people did not feel included by the more generic questions on the form. We have to be more generic. or sometimes we wanted to have more specific form for basic education schools, for example, but we couldn't, either due to people's lack of time. For us, this is not an obstacle to celebrating the results of this first mapping. This, just so you understand, this is the largest form we have in Brazil. We cannot forget the survey we had before, that we had 3,097 actions carried out for the first Brazilian Mid-Education Week. It is important to note that most of these actions are specific and carried out only for the week that coincides with UNESCO's Global Me Week in October. However, we still understand that by combining these actions that took place in 2024, plus the actions on the second week, which took place in this year, and the initiatives that take place on more permanent basis that we identified, we can imagine, we can dream that we soon will have a Brazilian network, Brazilian mid-education network very soon, which is what we recommended to SECOM in order to create a concentric movement on aggregation of forces, synergies, and a communication channel with the Brazilian governments. So let's move here. This is the form. We probably cannot understand because it is in Portuguese, but some parts of the form, the name of the initiative, the description of the initiative, and the third part is just to people put sites and some social media parts, products that people had products. If the initiative, for example, works on one of the axes of Brazilian strategy, the public of the initiatives, children, adolescents, young, adults, older. If the initiative receives some kind of support, for example, even if just, okay, you are very good, or money, or kind of financial support of the public power of a municipality, or any kind of support. What kind of support the initiative feel that is important? Training, material support, financial support. We put lots of, and what was very difficult, Jabir, please don't do this. Okay, you already did your. When you put others, Jesus, this is the hell. When you put others in a form, it's really complicated because most of people put others. So to analyze this is really, really complicated. But we have to do this because we had to do this because people need to form others and explain. People feel sometimes that they had to write, to put what they need. So we most of questions that we put, we had to do this. The state, the city, the type of institution, if it was a government, if it was journalistic, religious, environmental, if it's a university, a school, the level of a school, lots of possibilities, and also about the responsible for the initiative, the name, the contact, if the person responsible for the initiative want to receive some contact of us, because it's important because of the question of how can I say, it's a kind of a legislation of security. And the methodology I already talk, it's about snowball methodology. The snowball methodology has a kind of problem that is which is a community bias. when there is a risk of being restricted to groups and subgroups of people within the same target, for example, we tried to avoid or mitigate this risk when we first selected the target audience with people from different areas and regions of Brazil. Furthermore, another precaution we tried to take was the initial sending to subjects from 5 regions of Brazil, even though we knew that this would not guarantee responses to the same extent due to different results, realities, and maturity of the initiatives in each of these regions. Among the initial audiences to whom we sent from were associations of research and professionals, members and representatives, research networks in the areas of education and communications, and partners of SECOM, the governments, and civil societies we've already worked with media education. We try to put to other regions, different areas, not only communication education, but other areas like environmental areas, professionals, not only academic areas, to try to avoid this kind of community bias. And we asked to these people to spread the forum. About representativeness and the results, the first results. We had firstly, at the end of 20 days, we received 496 responses, which do not correspond to the number of institutions, but rather to the number of initiatives, since there is more than one for institutions. 478 initiatives with actions, and we had 17, 18 that stated that they did not have any initiatives in the area. It was very funny because we received some responses like, oh, media literacy, media education is very good, but I don't have. They respond, but they did this. I don't have, but it's very good. Just these 18 initiatives. We counted this separately from the others to understand why these people send this message they contain. Of course, we cannot say that all the responses are exactly what we consider, according to global and national references, media education. Many are trying to do something like media education, but they are not media education. But we choose to embrace these initiatives and seek based on network that we hope to build here to provide paths and indicators for them to meet with research networks, NGOs, civil society, organizations in the regions, so that they can exchange training, updates that can be carried out, making it clear what the government considers, what academic considers, what practices consider media education. But at the same time, showing the diversity that can exist in the country, because media educations are not a recipe. And in other regions, they can do media education according to their demands. And this is very important. We cannot do, this is media education like a recipe. We have a different situation in Brazil. So urban situation and the country are very extent. In addition to basic questions such as the name and institutes and data that can help us to start a national networks in this area, it was important for us to understand which axes for the Brazilian media education strategy they fit into, or whether they should undergo some revision. Just as the strategy itself will have a new editions in this year already with this weekend subsidies with this mapping. Another relevant point was to understand what type of support these initiatives have. So what they need most. So we can help maybe what government can help this. How can we put universities together these initiatives? How can we put some NGOs trying to do some training courses with these initiatives? Or how can these initiatives trying to do some training courses to the universities? Because it's not only universities that can teach something. we can do the opposite too. So this is very interesting. It is important to emphasize that we have no doubt that many initiatives were left out, as I told you. In terms of regions, we have this situation, but we already expect this. This region, Sudest region, is the region where we have São Paulo. There is the biggest state in Brazil. So it's kind of expected that we have this result. So we worked in 478 initiatives, 195 from Southeast region, 95 from South, 73 from the Midwest, 63 from Northeast, and 5 from North. This rest is interesting because it's not always, for example, from any kind of demographic census from Brazilian Institute of Geographic and Statistics, because the largest population, okay, is the Southeast region. The order of the population is not this one. So it's interesting. This green column, it's okay, we are expecting, but the other results, it's a kind of different. We were very happy because the North region, we aren't expecting so many initiatives, and they send a lot. So we was very great. We were very satisfied with this. Another situation that was interesting is the North situation. The North region sent us the most important initiatives about environmental. What is expected, because in the North region we have Amazon. So we have there the media education plus environmental initiatives. Other region that joined media education and environment was the Northeast regions. So these kind of studies that we are doing now was showing us something very important to us. What kind of problems in Brazil we can understand with this media education approach? What media education can show us about environmental violence, for example, with direction to children, to adolescents. Media education can show us this. School violence, for example, in regions like South, about this region in the column green. This green column, for example, is the region that we have lots of violence in the school, and media education are really used to try to solve the situation. And with these results, we can try to do lots of public policies about this. One of the first projects in Brazil with media education was in this region, and they, with this radio in school, and they was called, they began with radio in school exactly to manage a problem with violence, and was incredible. Nowadays, they are trying to solve, for example, some problems with health problems. They try to work with agents of health to go to the house of each people to talk to them about vaccines, about some diseases that they can treat in some how can I say, Albert, yo no sé cómo hablar en español, postos de salud en inglés.
You mean like a healthcare center?
Sí, algo así como, porque no es como un hospital, son como postos de salud más pequeños en varios, ¿sabes? No sé
Okay,
cómo hablar en
okay.
español.
Like
Y
family medicine.
sí, creo que así como pequeños postos de salud y esta columna verde, que es la región sudeste. Ahora hay muchos proyectos por ahí en que las personas, Javid, I'm asking, apologize. I'm just trying to ask some tips to Albert to do a translation
Oh, it's
here.
okay. No
I
worries.
understand Spanish. It's okay
No,
for
no,
me.
it's just because I put something here in. I did some translations, but now I remember something that was really interesting, but I don't know how to do this in English. It's a kind of a very small. It's not a hospital, Jabit. It's something small that we have in some areas in the city. You don't know to go to hospital. You
Or
go to
clinic.
Yeah.
no. It's a public. I don't know how can
But
I say it in
in
English.
this place, you are treated, or is it just an
No,
information
you are
center?
treated. You are treated. You receive vaccines, but just the
Okay.
small diseases. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. But I'm
Yeah,
trying.
we have,
I'm trying to tell you. But for example,
yeah, we have
in this green
here
in
in
this.
Spain something called Centro de Atención Primaria, like a
See,
first
see.
aid
Yes, yes.
center or
It's like
something like
this. It's
this.
like this. And I'm trying
Yeah.
to tell you that in this green column, for example, in São Paulo, we have a very successful program. They are doing they are doing a kind of training course with agents of health with edu communication that they are training these people. I was a validator of one of them, and then these people receiving this kind of training about media education or edu communication. So they go to the house of the people with another kind of perception, with another kind of conversation, um, and then they kind of convinced people, but not as just an agent of, but with a more dialogical conversation, horizontal conversation, and with a project that they have to do. They have to construct a project, a communication project. So it's a very interesting because it's the same project that people from environmental politics project has. So this edu communication, that's a very Latin America program that is related to media literacy program has, they are trying to do here. And these programs are really changing lots of realities here in Brazil. So because of this, we have to look at all of these columns and try to understand which one of them are working with, which issue are working with environmental, health, violences, and it's really interesting how we are working with one of them. It's really interesting. The other, this is regions, and these with the states, the 27 states in Brazil, and the axis of the strategies of the communications. They state with most initiatives, this was São Paulo, followed by Rio de Janeiro, Rio Grande do Sul, Minas Gerais. Here we have a very clear division in São Paulo of educommunication and media education. Here in Brazil, we have something very, in this research, we have this. This research shows us that in Brazil we have 4 groups: educommunication, media and information literacy. There is the concept of UNESCO. Media education. There is a concept that people from cinema use. And educação midiática, we have 4 concepts: educomunicação, alfabetização midiática informacional, mídia educação, e educação midiática. We have these 4 concepts, and these 4 concepts are spread in some parts of Brazil, and it depends on groups of universities, on groups of people that works with cinema, works with media education, people that works most with social movements, or in São Paulo or some parts of Nordeste of Brazil, or works with educommunication. People that works with the concepts of UNESCO, works with alfabetização midiática and information. We have these 4 very strong concepts in Brazil. They are the most strong. This research show us this, and it was an interesting result for us too. Other concepts that we have, other results we have, is the strongest of universities in Brazil. Another important point to understand why there are more or less initiatives in another region and states, and which can only be understood with more time and attention to this map, will be by cross-reference the data from the responses and analyzing them together with the update of public policies that will be continued to raise and seeing the origin of each initiatives. What we have already been able to analyze, albeit in a preliminary way, is that higher education institutions have a great importance in the development of media education initiatives in the country. Since, according to the data obtained, about a quarter of all initiatives in Brazil were developed from this space, a percentage similar to that of elementary schools, as shown in the following graphic. This demonstrated the strength of extensions projects and research groups at Brazilian universities, federal institutes, and colleges, among other projects such as observatories that also operate for the most part incubated at universities and higher education schools. We cannot draw conclusions without completing the surveys of public policies and the analysis of the mapping, but universities here appeal to the strongest where there are fewer initiatives, as if the initiative initiated the process. We will investigate further to more accurately state the period in which the actions were initiated, for example, and evaluate the open responses about the inspirations for media education of each initiative, which will provide us with some support and paths to follow. But we can tell you that universities and also elementary schools has the same weight in this research. Here in Brazil, we have something that you in Europe, for example, doesn't have too much. That is the extension. The universities here have lots of projects outside the universities in the communities. So lots of these projects are developed by universities in partnership with the universities. So this is very important, really very important. In the type of the institutions, for example, we are almost finishing the type of institutions that promote media and information leaders. Regarding the types of institutions that promote it, we have these results. However, we had cases in which this option was chosen only one. We have some institutions that have more than one. It is interesting to note the diversity of institutions in Brazilian society that can contribute to making media education. From a parent-teacher association to NGO and university, radio stations, language center, collectivist publishers. We have lots of this. If you look at this list, we have a governmental, journalists and mediatic, religions organization, environmental organization, health organization, all of these elementary school, lots of school, foundation and institution, foundation, associations, whatever, lots of this. And some of these initiatives are made by more than one together. So we have to analyze this. But it's really interesting. And we know that we have here just one religion organization, but we know that we have much more than one. We know here environmental organization, but we know that we have much more than one environmental organization that developed this. So this is something that we have to analyze. Brazilian companies and industries, for example, should do more, including those in the communication sector. Also need to think about how fake news and hate speech, for example, can affect them, and how employees, partners, collaborators, and more media literacy in a more media literate society create a more ethical, environmental, and a more democratic context with respect for human rights, for example. Why an industry, for example, can't do or couldn't do a program inside this space? It's something that we could think. For other side, I was talking with a specialist, and this woman asked me, but this industry, for example, could financiate one of these initiative. So maybe this industry are not doing anything inside, but are financiated, but they are financiated. So financiating the, we have to think better in this case, but we are trying to think in how we can stimulate these companies to do something inside. In the survey, we had the presence of, it's something interesting. We had in Brazil a kind of I don't know, how can I say in English? It's a kind of micro empreendedor. How can I say this in English? It's a kind of, how que eu digo, amor? Micro. In Spanish, it's like, how can I say? Entrepreneur. It's a micro entrepreneur. It's a kind of a person. They paid every month for the government to be a small entrepreneur. And we have,
is it like an enterprise, you mean, or?
Yes, exactly, Javid. Thank you.
Okay.
And we have this in our research, these kind of person that are doing lots of programs of media literacy. They invest in actions of media literacy. So it's very interesting because they are very small, but they are doing this. So it's very beautiful. And to finish this, this is the type of institution that's another, in the public of the initiatives, that's very important. As always, we have many initiatives that serve more than one group age, but the most relevant among those served according the responses is that adolescents. We have a total of 286 responses to adolescents, followed by children with 239. In third place, we have young people, and after that, adults, and the seniors, the last one. And this is a little bit complicated because seniors are always at the end. And adolescents, children, young are in schools and universities, but seniors, how can we reach these people? Are always a problem. are always a public that we have to reach. And seniors are a public that are always being touched by fake news and phishing and something like that. So the responses correspond to questions related to the access of the initiatives, most worked on by initiatives. But it's a good sign for an entire generation does not have time to live in the present and the transformations that have been happening even faster in the digital world, without forgetting to take into account all of the exclusion and lack of structure that we still have in the country. But on the other hand, a space for us to think about the adult and the elderly public who need to be taken into account in initiatives and public policies for digital inclusion and media education. I think it happens in all the world. The elderly are very forgetting. I don't know. We have to think about this. So I think this is the support received. I think it's the last slide. One of the questions we were interested in knowing what kind of support they received. The greatest type of support received by the initiatives has been recognition for the superiors. Oh, okay, very good, something like that. Followed by the institutional support for the government, the recognition for the community, and in a smaller number, we have some financial support. But in first place, we have the answer we would not have liked to have seen no support. So they need investment, financial investment, material investment. They want training, more training. When we asked other option, they indicated that they want supported for this. They wanted more training. They wanted more partnership with universities and NGOs, local NGOs, to private institutions, local institutions to develop more. Most of them tell us that they have ideas, but they don't know how to put ideas out of their heads. So kind of something that kind of that support from other support that they did. They have a kind of UNESCO support, CNPQ support. That is a kind of CNPQ. It's NCAP support. These two institutions, these the institutions that give us fellowship for study. So they have all of this. This is the support that are missing. Adds support. And also the access of Brazilian media education strategy. All of these are inside of the access of Brazilian media. And the most important is because it's the access of basic education. That is the most important access for the government of Brazilian, because the Brazilian government are trying to be more specific to education, to the basic education. So most of them are in the basic education. So to the Brazilian government, the research was good for a side, but we have some problems to solve. As a consultant, I gave to the government some tips, lots of tips. So as conclusion, what I can, as the first conclusion, because we are still studying these results, access to and construction of a plural and ethical media that reveal the polyphony of voices in society depends on the same society being prepared and educated in the media to access, produce, analyze, and have a more autonomous, critical, and creative relationship with the media. The survey of media education policies and initiative aims to collaborate with the updating of Brazilian media education strategy for this year, and the construction of a Brazilian public policy for the area, both with democratic roots initiated from a public consultation. The idea is that the results we identified here immediately and those that will still be extracted from data cross-reference can serve as support in creating channels for society to participate in order to meet their demands for qualification and support, perceiving the diversity of initiatives in their territories and how they can contribute to media education reaching scale in the country. With the database that was created for SECOM, it will be possible to provide clear information of the importance of media education for citizenship, democracy, and the defense of information integrity. Initiating this training in basic education is essential, especially because the axis most worked on by the initiatives is precisely this: media education in basic education. There were 301 responses from 47 to 80 that have initiatives. Engaging universities, which form 25% of public responsible for these initiatives as partners in training projects or in the axis of campaigns, for example, is essential. As further qualifying the basic education public, the majority of the initiatives target audiences can be done through partnerships with the various departments of the Ministry of Education and other partners in the government society. However, all of this cannot be done without looking for the other agents who want to invest in media education without it and elderly, the target audience with the fewest initiatives in the country. And perhaps the one that needs the most, the references and examples sent, as well the details of each of the initiatives will be analyzed so that it is possible to understand the roots of media education in Brazil and where each one of them operates and has produced its seeds. There are people from cinema and education, educommunication, media literacy, social environmental education, information media literacy education, who have extension projects, courses, research, groups, working in NGOs, institutes, foundations, publishers, collective associations, or even are individuals, micro entrepreneurs, working in 5 regions in Brazil, some for decades, and with small or large actions that make a difference. In this one plus one is always more than 2. At the end of this analysis of all of the initiatives and at the end of this contract of this research, we suggest the creation of a Brazilian media education network. I think it's one of the most important things here, that can strengthen the area and have a convergent movement, attracting more people and organizations throughout the country. In addition to creation of a repository with academic materials, contacts, reference, bibliographics, and a timeline with the story of a media education in Brazil, so that this group together can collaborate in the creation of Brazilian media education policy. What we have here is that since the 1960s, 1917, we have people in Brazil doing media education literacy in different ways. And people doesn't know about this. What we have here in this research was a very different kind of media education, media literacy, social environmental education, communication people working here, working separately. And what we suggested, it's this kind of network. We have lots of authors here that I studied, but if the Brazilian government doesn't join these people, we won't have a policy public strong. And we are very afraid of what will be in the next year. In the next year, we will have an election. And here the situation is very, very complicated, very dangerous. We are having good steps here, but media literacy can be very strong to try to be to consolidate it. So I think this is the next step to do. This network try to be consolidated here. This material will just be we still in the beginning of this study. I think we have a very rich material. I can send you later if you want. Later, with more information. But that's what we have now. The first steps. These answers that is really, really rich. I don't know if you have any questions about the methodology or the answers or whatever. And just to you understand, I was coordinator for 6 years for the national network of newspaper and education program in Brazil. And I could see lots of programs being developed. And I work in a newsroom, and I teach educommunication and media education. So I am one of the foundation of Brazilian Association of Educommunication. So it's completely, es como desesperador. Tengo que hablar en español porque es como desesperador ver como una timeline, varias cosas aconteciendo y las cosas no estarán mucho consolidadas. Hace mucho tiempo que las cosas están separadas y no son consolidadas.
Yeah, she says that she's been working in that for so long, and sometimes like kind of hopeless because I mean all the things are really not working together as a they are not united in this
How
case.
How we failed during so much time, and how people that work with this information are so successful. How can we let this happen? This is so sad. This is so, it's really bad. How the world it's in this place, how we can be in this place. Because we work with this for so many years. The work could be in a peace, in the peaceful way. We could live in a peaceful world if we had media literacy as a public policy in all the world. Because media literacy has to be with a respect, diversity, and we are living this world full of hate. This is, I don't know.
I like to think that with this kind of surveys and these kind of projects, we are doing something and we are helping people. Or at least we are trying to figure out what should work and what is not working. Right.
I don't know. What do you think, Jabir?
I wouldn't know what to say. I think people just have different thought process or mindset to certain things. I
Mhm.
wouldn't be able to say. I think I wouldn't know how to describe it, if you know what I will. If you know what.
Yeah. Well, I
Lorena,
think
just to finish.
I think it's an ambitious study where a lot of work has been done, and there will be more. Um, Research in general is difficult, and I think even more in this field.
sure.
It could be that it's really broad because the fact that it's also like really wide, like the research is really broad. A lot of people, I think, just don't know where to place themselves in the research or what they expect from the research itself. As I think Lorena said, it is a very difficult process as well, and also having people who are willing to support and participate and try to understand the research in terms of how it would benefit them and uh, the country or other places.
And the respondents, the people, my students, I see how difficult it is for they to respond on a questionnaire. Even at my classes, I let them 10 minutes and they don't answer. Yes,
What is
it's hard.
your project is about what, Lorena and Jabir?
My project it's about critical thinking and internet use at the students in my university where I teach. But I hard I collect the responses from with my help at my colleagues and voluntary the students very hard completed the questionnaire.
Mhm. Great, great. Perfect. And yours, Jabir?
The research was very difficult. I've had I think almost I sent it to almost 200 people. Um, Not only, and the sad thing is out of the 200, only I could say maybe 90 people looked at the survey and actually tried to do it. And I would say only uh, close to 50 people actually submitted the survey. And I'm not sure as to why they didn't finish it. I looked at the I use a website called Typeform, which I put in I put my questionnaires into, and I sent it to groups that I'm in, other groups. I tried to push the snowball effect where it starts to pick up traction. The issue was, I'm not sure what the issue is, but I had people message me saying, "What's your project on? What are you trying to get out of it?" Um, some would say a good job. Some would say I want to see the results. Others um, would just see it and just say, "Oh, it's a nice project." But I do know also that the people that I'm trying to target, I wouldn't say that they're sensitive, but they just also don't want to think about the certain topics that I offer. and they look at it and saying like, okay, like what merits or benefit that does your research have? And some have said it's a good idea. Some had said that, or I wouldn't say, but it's just they came off as more pessimistic, saying like, can this really, like, your research, is it just for you, just for the sake of your program, or are you, or in a sense, do you think this is really going to have people wake up, understand, especially in the community where from, like the Somali community, there's a lot of issues in terms of tribalism, people having issues with each other because of their tribal background, and they use social media as an outlet to sort of show pride into their tribal identity. So I also want to look at that in my research, how they're using that specifically. And what I've seen so far is some people want to dismiss it. Some people generally don't have any issues. But from what I've seen, people are a little bit sour. And I did have a friend where I asked him if I could come to the community center, the Somali community center. And he said, I don't think it's a good idea. This is what he said to me. And when he said that to me, I said, what happened? He's like, trust me, you don't want to deal with the people.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. I'm very hopeless with this research because we had very, very good responses, and also the responses, they are not interesting. I think it was interesting because we had a point of, for example, I don't have any kind of initiative of media literacy, and then we asked, why does people answer at us? Because the response was, I don't have media literacy, but it's good. But I think it's important. So we want to enter in contact with this person. You don't have, but you think it's good. So why you don't have? We want to enter in contact with these people, because if she decided to respond this question, maybe these people need to have some help. We didn't throw up. We want these people with us. Other people, for example, put as a media literacy, as a media education initiative, have a WhatsApp group with students. For this teacher, a WhatsApp group is a media education. We have to understand what is a media education for this teacher. We cannot just, this is not a media education. We have to understand what is media education for this teacher. And maybe try to take this teacher that is from North region and try to put this teacher in contact with another teacher that is doing another type of media education initiative, so they can exchange experiences. So because of this, I think that this network is really, really interesting. This is the goal of this this research. Put these people together, and then when these people begin to find their self, whoa, this will be a very potential. Imagining how this will be incredible, because they will exchange a lot of experiences, and then they can, well, like I expect the government to do this, not me. They can create a kind of, maybe a site, or I don't know, some kind of platform where all of these people can put these experiences and exchanges all of the materials and whatever. Now we have a kind of, not NGO, but enfim, an organization that are helping me to read this research, and we are doing this together. So I think it will be very, very good. next year will be the last year of this government, so they have to be very. But that's it. So I really want to appreciate. I want to thank you again to this moment, and I'm open to talk to you another time with another issue.
Thank you, Cristiane.
And don't forget this quote from John Lennon, okay?
Yeah, I was going to thank you for ending this session in a more humoristic and more positive way, because we were maybe going into a non-positive, dark um, territory now, but I think we can be proud of the work we are doing. And guys, studying helps, and I think this master will help you to maybe see the world in a different way and to help you in your professional career. So just for that, we are proud. And I don't know if you maybe would like to share anything else, any thoughts about the course today, anything about
If you
the,
want materials, or I
yeah,
have lots of things. I decided to share this research, but if you have, I have lots. If you want, to have lots of materials if you want. So you can ask me too. Albert can share my contacts, okay?
sure, yes. So, okay, in this case, we're going to leave it here. Thank you, Cristiane, for your time today. Thank you, Lorena, and thank you, Joey, for joining us today too. And we see you now in a couple weeks with the final session. I hope you all can connect so we can see each other's faces before ending this course. For me, it was a real pleasure. And if you need anything and you have any question about the final thesis presentation, the due date is in 3-4 weeks from now, you can always reach us by email or by WhatsApp. So thank you guys,
Okay.
and see
Thank
you
you.
in a
Thank you,
few
Thank
guys.
you.
days.
Bye
Take care
bye.
now. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.